All right. Pardon for that short mute. In fact, this session was supposed to be recorded, so I did not switch it on, and I'm just switching it on. So, first and foremost is all of us who have been to the B school, we all understand how the business enterprises are run in various dimensions of the business enterprise, but how often we identify ourselves with an enterprise. So, in fact, in our own respective individual lives, we are nothing but an enterprise. We have certain inputs, we have certain outputs, we have certain income, we have certain expenses, we have certain investments into ourselves. Each one of us concurrently make those, and we do progress, we do enhance. So, in a way, the enterprise thinking applies to an individual personal development as well in a professional career. And so, in that aspect, how hello, 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 can you hear me? Yes. So, I was talking about how we all manage our careers, and quite often it is said that your career is not a 100-meter dash, which you sprint just after you graduate out of a campus, get a campus placement, and an excellent opportunity to get a head start to your career, right? That is the launch pad, and that's about it. But your career is much beyond your launch pad, and this requires multiple interventions as you go in your career. And that's how we see that career is not just about a even a marathon, but it is a decathlon wherein you require distinct set of skill sets. Like you see when you're doing a decathlon or pentathlon, various disciplines of sports, the athletes have to participate and excel in, whether it's swimming, whether it's running, cycling, etc. And you can't say that I will learn it as I get closer to it. And that's what the school has imparted to each one of us, to how to navigate various stages of our career by equipping ourselves with the required communication skills, required leadership skills, required business skills, whether it's in finance, whether it's HR, whether it's team management, whether it's operational excellence, whether it's operational research, and various other dimensions. So it is important that each of these capabilities are honed as we take this journey when we enter into the later on the phases of our careers. And one of the important things in that is how each professional measures himself or herself as against the needs of, or the current needs and the demands of, the current role, as well as the aspirations one has about one's career. So that's where we talk about the today's world, which is changing rapidly, whether you call it automation, whether you call it globalization, whether you call about protectionism, whether you talk about deepening and widening competencies, whether you talk about super specializations, whether you talk about automation of automation, various things. But suffice to say that in terms of our output to our respective enterprises or business organizations or our own businesses in personal lives, we are demanded a multiplier effect continuously. Otherwise, the survival itself is quite often in question, leave alone aspiring for the next orbit. So under that context, what are some of the time-tested and understood individual or personal attributes one has seen over a period of time in a different context? In my past life, I was running a global business, and currently I am a CEO of a fintech enterprise. And so I've had experience of interlocuting with hundreds of CEOs in more than 80 plus countries and across the width and breadth of businesses, but largely, of course, focused in certain financial industry and technology industries. So what you're seeing here and hearing here is a distilled learning from my learning diaries of the personal attributes I noticed with some of the successful professionals. So we would go into each of these attributes one by one, and feel free to type in your questions or observations so I would be able to respond to them as we go. So these four attributes, the first one being the rule of relevancy. Quite often we believe that I am equipped for my task when I complete my formal education. But your employment context or your professional context could be very different from what one would have imagined, and the professional context itself could be changing rapidly, either because of your own initiative to change roles or because of the larger market context being changing. So how do you really look at this factor of relevancy? And to my mind, this is one singular factor where many good career professionals plateau out in their careers. When you see 2 or 3 individuals from the same batch, we say I'm PGP XYZ batch, and why somebody is reaching out for some stars and somebody is plateauing at some stage is that, you know, how they are actually unleashing these mid-career boosters to actually look at how relevant they are. So there have been tremendous amount of literature and coaching material available in the public domain, but it is a simple question of validating how relevant am I to my today's role and how relevant am I going to be for my next role or my next aspiration. So let me give you an example. Today, the industry which I've been familiar with, one of them is the technology industry, where lots of roles are becoming irrelevant, you know, which have become very, very important as value contributors, value creators, suddenly become not even value adds, becoming irrelevant. So how do you really foresee these, and how do you really have a periodic check at it? So when I look at relevancy, it is not about the skill, but all the competencies, whether it is communication, whether it is ability to learn quickly, whether it is ability to comprehend new businesses models, new competition we are competing with, or the new kind of input, whether it is demographic or geographic, you know, changes which are taking place, and having a question about, in this context, say if I am a project manager, or if I am an engagement manager, if I am a regional sales manager, if I am a product developer, if I am a software engineer, if I am a manufacturing, you know, plant supervisor. So how has this role changed over a period of time? Is that role still relevant or not? Or some new roles are coming up? And now, if the role itself is not going to be there, how am I changing the relevancy? So I am engaged with the IT industry, as I said. Many folks in their mid-careers, now they find that, you know what, I was playing an aggregator role, which in a high growth phase of the industry was very important and relevant. But as the industry matured, now I need to look at something more than an aggregator, but as an individual contributor. So many times my previous role has not given me an opportunity to be an individual contributor, but I need to actually repurpose myself to be an individual contributor. As part of the Gunaka initiative, for example, we help, I'm on the board of global board of international software product management's professional body, and we help some of these people who are interested in repurposing themselves from a sales role or a delivery role or a operations role into a product management role, which is more relevant to have a holistic 360 view of a product and be able to take a P&L responsibility, for example. So we are talking about what competencies do I bring to bear and how I impact the ultimate. If you are in the business context, whether in a startup or in a large corporation, am I impacting the ultimate business outcomes which this business is measured on, and is that high or low? Some of us, we know we are contributing, but we do not know how relevant it is to the ultimate stakeholders. Second one is the relevancy factor. Here is where you actually relate to the impact also, is that am I relevant to only the internal stakeholders, or am I relevant to the customers as well? And is it that I'm called upon occasionally, or am I relevant all the time? Am I the primary source of engagement? Am I the secondary source? And when you talk about my survival, leave alone my growth, what are my potential substitutes? Some of us suddenly realize that my role can be automated, or my role can be outsourced, or my role can be aggregated, and my role may not exist. So in which case, how do I fare compared to my potential substitutes? And is that significantly different or marginally different? And this, how often do I do this checklist? Once a quarter, once a year? I don't do it at all. But I do it, but subconsciously, it is important that all of us apply this. And in my own personal life, in fact, many mentees whom I worked with or friends I worked with, they said that, look, I apply this in my personal life. Am I relevant to my children continuously? So if my children have outgrown, their childhood, now they are adults, now they are, let's say, they are no longer financially dependent on me, let's say, in which case, how am I relevant? My 90-year-old dad, what is he saying himself that, how am I relevant to my grandchildren? Am I bringing in something different for them, something unique, something differentiated, something sustainable, something valuable for them? And so it is important, not just in a professional environment, but continuously evaluate our relevancy and look at what kind of interventions are required to, if there are any, for making ourselves relevant. So the checklist here is, what did I unlearn or learn recently? And the recency factor could be last month, last quarter, last year, or last week, depending on the nature of your business, your job, your role. You can decide the recency. And how fast is the environment around me is changing? Is it changing faster than or am I changing? Am I learning faster than my environment? And so if the rate of change of the ecosystem is faster than the rate of change of my own context, then I have my days numbered. So I think it is important that we take this relevancy factor. So I would like to pause for a moment and see if there are any questions on the relevancy factor here. Please type in the chat window. Okay, so let me go to the next attribute, which is the openness. See, these are very, what you say, 30,000 feet motherhood kind of attributes, it may appear, which actually people use various, what you say, adjectives or attributes to these. But simply put, the understanding, as long as it is the same, it doesn't matter whichever word you give. So coming to the openness part of it, for a long time in my own career, when I was working with teams, I thought an individual's performance is dependent on two factors largely. One is how equipped an individual is to play that role, and how motivated is that individual to play that role. But down the line, I realized that there is a third and even more important factor, that what are the mindsets this individual is bringing in to bear, which is either holding him or her back, or which is helping him or her excel. So these mindsets could be like, for example, we can have mindsets based on our own experiences. Like, for example, these could be based on cultural. So suppose somebody used to, when I was young, people said that, okay, I came from a conservative background, and some of my friends who came from a similar background had reservations about somebody who used to party regularly. So no, he's a party kind of a guy. He's not a serious guy. Or let's say in terms of a style. Okay. I have a question. In fact, on the relevancy factor. So sorry for pausing on this, and let me read this. Uh, um, Roles keep evolving given the dynamics of business. How does one tend to be relevant? Specific inputs are helpful. Thanks. This is then there was another question. It clearly comes out that relevance is relative. How to be best find what to compare with. Excellent questions. You are absolutely right. The relevancy factor is never an absolute. So the relevancy factor is that, look, that is where I talked about the substitutes, etc. And so today, if I'm talking about in a context of automating the automation, and if I'm a programmer, and my skills lie on largely in coding, and so are these relevant? They may be relevant in a different context. So going back to the place where we are saying, the relevancy is always also in a different context. So suppose many people in my early days, people used to say that, oh, don't go into mainframes. Those are no longer relevant anymore. And some people choose to remain in mainframes, and they never went out of fashion. There were few jobs there, and they continued to excel in that limited area. So it is indeed relevant. What you're looking at is, look, I would like to be in this particular, it could be, that's why I talked about in a demographic, in terms of geographic, or it could be skill-based, or it could be based on aspirations. So suppose if I am in my career, I moved from various roles, from a domain-specific role, from a hardcore architecture in technology, into delivery, into business, into sales, various things. So at every stage, when I moved from one role to another, so from being a head of a professional services into being a CEO of a business, then the relevancy factor is that, look, the amount of detailing I would like to go into on the execution aspect, on the delivery, I need to reduce, and I need to be able to take a larger context. Or in terms of the team part of it, it is not about execution alone, it is raising the aspirations of the people. Or when I switch my role from a corporate leadership role to an entrepreneur role, my relevant skills were very different. So I was managing thousands of people, and here people management role of large team were not relevant at all. And there it was a lot about influencing skills, but here it's all about ideating focus. And of course, influencing skills in a different way. It's not about influencing your peers and other departments, but here influencing the investors. And of course, some of them are similar to the customers, etc. So net, I think the questions are very important. These are relevant and these are relative. You need to really look at, that's why I called a GPS. When you say GPS for professional excellence, the GPS is not a static one. It keeps on calibrating based on where you are, and accordingly you keep asking the questions. So coming back to I hope that answer helped. So let me come back to the openness part and the mindsets part of it. Many a time you all realized in your own careers that the mindsets hold us back. So either the mindset in terms of the cultural and the contextual. Like for example, when we switch jobs from one company to another company, based on the culture of the corporation, some of the mindsets you may have to let go. right? So there are some context and time invariant values. Please don't get mixed up with values and beliefs and the mindsets. Mindsets are crystallized point of view that, look, this should be done like this only. Thou shalt do this way only. And there are multiple examples you will be able to do that. And some of them are transient and permanent, and some of them are inherited, like our bosses told. Like, for example, many times we see our bosses quoting from their context. Look, when I was a programmer, I had 120K memory limitation. So, I was to do this, I did this, etc. But those examples are not relevant to the, youngsters today, and they need a different example. So, it is important that, so this may be a cultural issue. When folks go and work in a multicultural environment, they would come across various things, so it could be personal mindsets as well as the corporate mindsets inherited and thrusted upon us. And it is important that we make a serious evaluation at all times. What are the mindsets are impacting us? Suppose if I predominantly stayed, at a back end in my corporation, and suddenly I go to the front end with engaging with the clients, what are the things I need to change, right? So similarly, if I'm a leader of a large team, what kind of apprehensions or what kind of mindsets I am consciously importing, whether it is the perspective about the customer, oh, these customers are like that only, or oh, these partners are like this only. So these are consciously, subconsciously, we all look at it. But trust me, these are all continuously seen by your peers, your customers, your senior leaders, etc. And it is important that we take a conscious inventory of what are my current inhibitions. You know what, like for example, if I am technically challenged, let's say, you know what, I have not done enough work in artificial intelligence. So when the context comes AI, I would say that, hey, you know what, that is still very, very nascent, and it is not worth attempting at this point of time. But the thing is that when corporations are able to implement AI in a distinct way and able to impact business outcomes, so I cannot hold a view that, oh, this is not relevant anymore. So it could be a new technology, it could be a way of working with substitutes or with partners. There used to be a time where, you know what, product engineering, you cannot have, substitutes coming in and working. So there can be many examples, and I'm sure in your own respective careers you would have seen. So any questions or observations on the mindsets, please? Okay, so while the inputs come in on this, let me go to the third one. This again, the factor of the trust factor is it's a very hyped one, but very relevant. If there is one phrase or one word, I summarize my entire experiential learning in my personal and career life, it is about the trust. Because when you have more than one person, the element of trust comes. So the trust is, so it could be nebulous, you don't know what you mean by trust. So you often, read about, okay, trust is earned over a life, but lost over a minute or a second, right? So in your context, so this needs to pin down to a specific context. Here we are talking about professional excellence. So who am I trusted partner to? If I'm interacting with, let's say, I'm an entrepreneur, I engage with my, let's say, investors, I engage with my customers and prospects, I engage with my partners, I engage with my team and colleagues, and I engage with my, let's say, the leadership team, whoever it is. So what are the factors for them to build a trust on? Okay, so why is trust? Essentially, trust is an element which brings in certainty, it brings conviction, it becomes dependability, it becomes what you say, a frictionless engagement in business. So you need to really look at, in my role or in my future role, who all do I need to build a trusted relationship with? And what am I to be trusted for? So am I to be trusted for my judgment on a game which we are going to watch over the weekend? No. I may take a wrong call that, look, this team is going to lose and, that team may win. And I may take a right call on, hey, you know what, this technology is going to be relevant, and so we need to quickly adapt and put this, So say suppose I'm moving from a monolithic to an API-based architecture, or I'm moving in from another one. So I need to really look at what are the aspects of my professional life I need to demonstrate trusted relationships, and I need to demonstrate trust, and I need to foster and inspire trust in my whoever are the stakeholders, and that needs to be very clearly understood. It is not about being a good guy, being a nice guy, or being a loyal person, or being a so that the embodiment of everything good or whatever, but it is a very clear definition about what kind of a certainty, conviction, predictability I would like to give to whom, in what context. And that needs to be inventorized, and that needs to be, okay, for my customers, for example, I moved from banking domain into the capital markets domain. So now when I'm selling my product to capital market customers, so how do I inspire trust in them? So number one, not only about my learning, but with the kind of a team, we put them together, and from the kind of an experience I am able to bring in, saying that, hey, you know what, banking industry, these are the kind of challenges they faced in 90s, and some of these challenges capital markets are facing in the current decade, and these are the relevance, and be able to bring in a correlation between my past experience and the insights what I got to the industry, then I can be trusted. So the trust could be generic in terms of, hey, you know what, I can look into your eyes and give business because you would care for your reputation, you would care for your customers, you have a long-term vision and view of the business, and you do not take shortcuts, etc. So that is a motherhood apple pie. But second one is trust in terms of your skills, your ability to execute, and your ability to estimate what it takes to deliver, comprehend, etc., and your ability to understand me. So the trust is at all levels, and this is very important to look at and calibrate for each one of us as a GPS, professional GPS. So in my current role and in my next role, who are all the key people whom I need to inspire trust in, and how do I bring that to the table? So that is about the trust. And let me pause here, and I'm sure there would be lots of perspectives on that. Happy to clarify. I'm not taking too many industry-specific examples because some of them are pretty obvious to all of you. But here the focus is all about bringing in, inventorizing, and being as specific as possible rather than being a generic, oh, I'm a trusted employee, I'm a trusted vendor, I'm a trusted partner, etc. But being able to define and list it out. So let me pause here and expect any points of view, questions, or observations on the trust element, please. Oh, absolutely. This is a great question. Will it always take time to build real trust? Yes and no, and I do not know what you mean by real trust. So trust is only one, binary, yes or no, either you trust or you don't. So, for example, if I'm new to a place and I want to go from airport to a business meeting, and I calibrated that it should take 45 minutes, and what best than going for a trusted brand of what you say conveyance, where I could actually say that, hey, if I do this hail cab, or if I do this, I can definitely be on time and safe, right? So sometimes the trust is need based on a specific instance, what your observation is, or that's how the brands are built, right? So this is hearsay, even if I'm trying that product for the first time, but I've heard about that product so much that I trust, and I don't have to verify, validate until my next experience is proving otherwise. So yes, the trust is, time is one of the important elements, but you cannot always say that. So if that is so, a startup, how do they build their trust? So you need to have some surrogates as well. That means you need to say that, hey, you know what? Experience is one of the important factors. I used to have this challenge. I had customers in 85 countries across 6 continents. In most cultures, the business consultants, they were expecting, gray and bald, mid-age consultants with 20 years experience. Sorry for the joke about the gray and bald. I am gray and bald. I'm joking on myself, but suffice to say that they experience a 20-year-old something, experience 40-year-old somebody. So there is a 25-year-old. My colleague walks in. Hey, you know what? How could she or he solve my problem? But when we are able to demonstrate, give 24 hours to this person to comprehend and articulate and paraphrase your business definition and problem and opportunity and solution, then they will immediately trust, right? So you need to really look at what are the factors which inspire trust, and what are those factors which actually inhibit, and then you need to really address that. So second question was, is trust mutual? Um, in relationships, yes, and of course, it's always mutual, but it is not that, it has to be earned both ways, but essentially sometimes, a client has to trust you a lot more, who is taking bigger impact. You are taking a smaller impact and he's taking a bigger impact, then he needs to have much more trust in you. And also, it is, suppose if it is an equal relationship between partners, so you can say it's mutual. But yes, otherwise, trust always has to be mutual. Many of us have acquired new skills to be relevant, but lack relevant experience in that areas. So it is an impediment for the boss to trust me. Oh, excellent. So I'll give you an example how trust could be built. In fact, it was a chance interaction with an youngster who just passed out from an MBA from a reputed school, and he's in a family business of jewelry. And he says that, look, sir, I told my father and uncle we need to change the design of the store in a particular way. It's a very reputed, designer jewelry shop and brand as well. And I said, look, I tell them and they don't trust me. They don't say that, okay, your B school has no relevancy or this is a traditional family-owned business. And so how do I impress them? So I cannot really take another 10 years to do the business the same way they do, so that I earn their trust. So here was the suggestion, and say, guys, how many times, you have, let's say, about 100 to 150 walk-in customers in a day. How many of these customers have you actually spoken to and said that, what's been your experience of walk-in purchase in my store? And how many of you have actually mentioned about this store in your social network, either on Facebook or WhatsApp, etc.? So what should I do for you to go and say, wow, my experience in this store has been phenomenal in your social network? So look at just one aspect of using the social network of your walk-in customers to have certain repeat business, and which you measure. Whenever a customer comes, a new one, you say that, have you been referred to on a social network? And you'll be able to articulate this much percentage of the new business has come through the word of mouth, through the social network. And he did that. Within 4 months, he was able to prove that, hey, you know what, I am relevant to the business. I might not have run a jewelry business for 20 years like you did, but I know how to engage new generation customers and be relevant in today's world. And then his father and uncle gave him a freedom to really redesign some parts of the business and open it up. So trust is always earned. Trust is never given as an entitlement. And so your experience is not always an impediment, as long as you are able to bring in a different point of view. So in the today's day and age, the experience, excuse me, particularly measured in the number of years, It's not much of relevance anymore. So when I look back, my 20, 30 years of industry career, many things have changed so much that the way I engaged with people, the way I delivered software, the way I designed a business structure, the way I did many things have changed, including your delivery models, including your architectures, including these. So of course, there are time invariant principles in terms of like what we're talking about, the roti part here. So you need to really look at, you don't always be the victim of, oh, if only I was experienced part of it. An experience need not be direct. It can be vicarious. It can be an extrapolation of what you did. So for example, when we are in B school, we do lots of activities, team activities, so doing a business plan contest, doing an event management, etc. Why do we do that? We are creating a kind of a prototype, say that, look, if I could manage 5 lakhs or 6 lakhs of a budget for a student activity, I can do 600 lakh or 6 crore budget for your business as a product manager or whatever. So I think those are the kind of a, what you say, ways where you can create or inspire trust in your stakeholders. I hope the questions were addressed on the trust part of it. And if there are any more, we can come back to this. And the last one is about the ability to influence. And this is very interesting aspect, and particularly those people, those who worked inside the organization, particularly in the production, in development, design, engineering, architecture, all those people, they think that, hey, you know what, I don't have to influence, I don't have to network, I don't have to sell. And even those people who run, some of the entrepreneurs, they believe that, look, if my product is really good, it sells for itself. So sometime back, one of my mentors, when I was moving from a hardcore product engineering into the field, I was, actually kicked upon into a leadership role to be a global professional services head, wherein I had to interlocute with CEOs, etc. So here is what my mentor told me: Hara, networking is also working. What does it mean? Many times you feel that, hey, you know what, Kamka, why should I call up somebody and reach out to him and understand, etc. So networking is not important. If I do my job very well, if my product is really good, I put it on the shelf and it sells for itself. But the thing is that the ability to influence, so the influence part of it is taken in many times in a negative conversation. But it is important that we understand what are my limitations and what are my styles of influencing. And suffice to say that in these 4 dimensions of ROTI, if you are not able to influence, even if you are very good on relevancy factor, even if you are very good on openness and without mindsets and very refreshing all the time, and always bringing in new ideas and taking others along, etc., and all these, without the influence part, the roti becomes the rot. So you are not really moving anywhere, you are rotting in a corner. So what are my strengths? Am I comfortable influencing my bosses, my board, my supervisor, my immediate or his boss? Am I comfortable bringing in a point of view and bringing in consensus with my peer group? Am I comfortable with not instructing but influencing my team and saying that, guys, this is an exciting stuff, this is the important thing, we must focus, let's spend this extra effort on that. Are they with me and they jump into the pool with me, right? And second, am I comfortable in a monocultural, that means within my company context, or can I influence external stakeholders, as in my customers, prospects, external partners, vendors, suppliers, whoever it is? And one is that, so understanding and taking a status check of what are my comfort areas and what are my right areas and wrong areas, or strength areas and areas to work on. Second is that each one of us are comfortable in certain style of influencing. And so the 6 parameters or 6 primary means are primarily derived from. So in this whole presentation, I have avoided giving references, because you all would have read about, but here in this context, I talk about Robert Cialdini. So his book on and his work, body of work on ethical influence is a reference stuff. So he talks about 6 primary means in terms of reciprocation. That means, okay, I did this for you, so I create an obligation for you to do this for me. Or second thing is that, hey, you know what? This is one of an opportunity. This is a limited edition, or there are only 3 pieces available, or only 2 seats available, so it's going fast. Third is that authenticity. Hey, you know what? I did my PhD in this subject, and that seals it. Or look, I have already spent 20 years developing this kind of a model. Consistency is about, look, I managed many large multi-hundred million kind of projects, so now I can definitely do this. Or, hey, you know what? You play golf, I play golf. We have something alike. You enjoy hip hop, I enjoy hip hop. You go for these concerts, I go for these concerts. So we both holiday. We are both the Alps guys. Or consensus based on, hey, you know what, that customer, this is what consensus is, typically the references which you get from customers. Customer A said, I work very well. Customer B says, I work very well. So C says very well in different contexts. So I am building a consensus. So there are each one of us has strength areas. Like, for example, if you are playing a sport, you are specializing in a particular area. Similarly, you have a natural tendency to you may not sometimes discover it that this is your natural strength, but you have your primary strengths in terms of the ability to influence, whether it is your children, your spouse, your parents, your boss, your customers, your team members, etc. Try and identify what is your strength area. That's only half job done. For your job or your future job, what is the kind of influence skill I need to have? And that is very important as well, because unless you really are able to identify that, you may be good at particularly, like, for example, I'm a architect, and I bring in my style of influencing is the authenticity, right? So I can sit in front of the CTO, CIO of a customer organization and convince them hands down why my platform is the best in the world. In fact, yesterday I was sitting in a conversation where the CEO, CTO, CIO, everybody were there in a meeting. Now, my authenticity on architecture for a enterprise is only limited to influence only 2 out of the 4. So what do I need to do? I cannot say that just this alone. So I should be able to articulate, and I should be able to bring in a different means to influence somebody who cannot really appreciate my point of view on my authenticity in one particular area. So I need to bring in the scarcity element, for example, say, hey, you know what, my intelligent assistant is the first of its kind, and this is the first one which is a transactional capability for an intelligent assistant. So there are only so many customers worldwide, or so many players who have used this kind of a mixed multimodal machine learning and all those aspects, and you could be the first in your industry to be doing this. So that could be a kind of a motivation for somebody. So I think you need to really constantly evaluate, number one, what are your strength areas, and what are the areas you are acquiring proficiency in, and very important to match them in terms of your current role and your future role. What kind of influencing means are going to be important depending on your stakeholders and whoever you are addressing, and what are those you would like to influence upon. And that inventory and a periodic validation in a checklist would greatly help. So let me pause here and seek your feedback on ability to influence. And okay, question here, what kind of a role is played by relevancy and trust to be influential? Oh, absolutely, this is a beautiful question. And largely relevancy and trust elements are brought in into authenticity element. That means if, let us say, I want to be, let's say I'm in a employment, I'm looking out for a role and I'm a consultant, and I go into an interview for the final one. And so I say that, hey, you know what? I have all the relevant skill sets. So I bring in, look, in this project or for this customer in UK, I did this. For this customer in US, I did this. And I have been able to save this much, or I was able to generate this much value, and I'm able to bring this in. So one is that the facts I am able to bring in, that I have the relevant skill sets. I'm able to demonstrate that by articulating the nature of value I created or added, and in fact, add the material facts in terms of the outcomes in in numbers, that what is the impact I have been able to make for the business in terms of the top line, bottom line, and based on that, I'm able to bring in the trust as well. So I think the authenticity is one area where your relevancy and trust can be brought in. Reciprocation is more like you are sometimes you are the first one to give. Sometimes you give certain information. I found somebody, they do a lot of research and share to their prospects that, look, this is the state of the industry. And that is important, that when they share pro bono that research with their customers, they are actually creating a compelling, I wouldn't call obligation, but openness, saying that, hey, you know what, I shared this, what do you think? And how do you like to engage me into this? So that's something like a reciprocation you could. So, but yes, the relevancy and trust are dovetailing into the ability to influence, and that's what you should. You should consciously bring in the dimension of influence. Otherwise, even if you have the relevant skill sets and you are trustworthy, but if you are not using the means of authenticity to articulate that, then you're rotting. You are not really playing that to your benefit. So that's what the influence is, that all that what you have, we're actually bringing to the table and demonstrating that. So influence is that way, ability to present that for concluding the outcomes. So any more questions on the influence part? All right, so we have 6 more minutes. In fact, 2 more minutes is what I need to summarize. How does one position? The challenge is to show compelling value over and above the skills, relevancy, and being trustworthy. How does one position? I think that is a summary of this whole thing. Essentially, none of these dimensions are unidimensional. All these orchestrated well is when you bring in the roti factor. So essentially, the influence skills is playing. You may have a repertoire of 20 skills or 30 skills. Like for example, if you are playing cricket, you may have in your repertoire 40 strokes, right? But the thing is that when a short-pitched ball is thrown at you, you should know that, hey, you know what? For this, I need to hook. And that is the ability to influence. In terms of the entire repertoire, how do you really bring in the dimension which is in play and be able to show that? So what is the current context? Being aware of that, that is where the self-awareness is extremely important in bringing out what it is. It is not the entire my resume of 20 pages. It is the ability to bring in the awareness and say that in this context, what should I say, what should I respond, what should I give, and what should I use? And that's what actually gets you the winner. So let me summarize with the last one. So when you do a health check, so you got to really do on 4 dimensions. All right, I'm an entrepreneur. I quit my job as a business executive in a large corporation as a leadership role, and I started my entrepreneurship. I moved from my banking industry, and so it's a much smaller outfit. I moved into capital markets. So what are my relevant skills for running an enterprise? Entrepreneurship, a startup. So I evaluate. I say, you know what? I'm still around 7. Maybe I'm generous. On my openness, look, for my age, for my experience, I'm a lot more open to take ideas from youngsters. I work with IIT, IIM, and various youngsters who join in as interns, etc. And these inputs flow into the business plan, into the product design, trustworthiness, so the feedbacks. These are all based on the feedbacks I'm good at, but my ability to influence some of my investors or my prospects in a different field of business, I need to improve on. So these are illustrative. So you do that, and so you want to do it monthly, whether quarterly, weekly. It's your call, but it should be a conscious health check and followed by plans and interventions. So let me conclude here and see if there are any last questions. Otherwise, we could say thank you very much. So brilliant. So thank you very much. And if Partha, yes, I see Partha's comment. Thanks, Partha, for giving me the opportunity. And this is close to my heart. And yes, I've been, doing the sessions on this for my colleagues in different parts of the world in the past. And it's a great opportunity for me to do to the IIMB alum community. And I look forward to participating in more webinars. And Partha, thanks once again for kickstarting this initiative, and this is awesome. I'm sure we all will benefit. And guys, you have my mail ID, and happy to get your feedback and incorporate those into the future sessions. And maybe if you feel that you want to pass this on to some of your friends, feel free to reach out, and I'll be able to share with you these guys. Okay, thank you very much. Bye bye.